Well, thank you, Scott. I'm happy to be here. I kind of wanted to make a comment after every sentence of that intro, a little disclaimer. You heard that was Dancing with the Community Stars, right? Not the real show. Just a little fundraiser that was going on locally.
I don't think that's loud.
Just crank it down.
Is that better? Okay. All right, but I appreciate the intro, and I was a student here. I got my bachelor's and master's, like you said, in communications, but I had a minor in business. So I spent a lot of time in the Tanner building and toyed with switching my major, but my passion was always communications. And I'm glad I studied business. At the time, I didn't do it because I thought I was going to start a business. I did it because I thought I would be a business writer. I thought I'd work at Business Week or Forbes or something, and I wanted a background in business principles. And I also love a challenge, and business students are ambitious and competitive, and I like that energy and things too. So I loved being part of it. It's great to be here. I didn't realize this was the last class. This is the grand finale. Well, I don't know if this is going to, fit the bill, but I'm glad to be here. And you guys are almost done with the semester. Way to be here right to the end. I love it. I'm happy to be here and share my story because when I was a student, a business student here, I craved women speakers, honestly. A little bit of information on balancing all the roles that I hope to have in my life. And so I'll address that a little bit today, but it's awesome. I see more females here than I remember in my classes here. I love that. I love that. The world is a great place. The business world is a great place for women and men. I'm excited to tell my story. So yes, we started magazines. We started magazines, Utah Valley Magazine 15 and a half years ago. And the world has changed drastically since then. When I was a student here, I was the editor of the Daily Universe. We had a print publication 5 days a week. Everything was about that printed paper. And now, of course, you've read more news while you've been sitting in these chairs than I produced when I was a student here at BYU. The world has changed drastically, but we're still in the print industry. It's been an interesting time to own a business in an industry that is changing. And all industries do change, and it's been my pleasure to interview a lot of business people, a lot of them who've probably spoken to you this semester, and they all talk about evolving with the market and making those changes. So I'm happy to tell you a little bit about my story today. A little bit of a start. So I'm from Idaho Falls. Do we have any Idaho? Yeah, sweet. Bonneville High School, anyone? Okay, go Bees. I loved growing up there, small town, great place, kind of windy, but it was a fun place for me to grow up. My high school job was at Channel 3. I was the camera operator, and before that, in elementary school, I had this really brave teacher who said, I want you guys to not come to school next Wednesday, and I want you to job shadow somebody in a career you might be interested in. I don't know that teachers can do that very often, and I don't know if she still kept her job, but we all skipped school, and I job shadowed a newspaper reporter at the Post-Register in Idaho Falls. And I loved it. I loved the energy of something happening that day, and I got to watch her write it up. That day, a bus slid off an icy road into a ditch. Icy roads up there. And we got to drive out there. We took a picture of, I say we, but maybe it was her. But the bus slid off. We took a picture. We went back. We developed it in the darkroom. It really used to work that way. And then we wrote it up, and it was on the front page of the paper the next day. And I felt pretty cool that I was in on that news story before it happened. So that elementary school project really got my mind going, got me thinking about the possibilities and the excitement that I felt. And a lot of times when you're thinking about what kind of career, what kind of industry you want to be involved in, if you think back to your childhood and things that interested you, things you could think about or talk about for hours, that's a clue. That's a clue. So I loved that, and then just sought out those opportunities. In junior high and high school, I was the yearbook editor. I was the newspaper editor. In fact, I took my first airplane ride as a senior in high school to pick up an award because our high school newspaper that I was the editor of won a national award. And so I got to fly to Columbia and pick that up. So this has been a good field for me. It has exposed me to a lot of interesting people and a lot of interesting opportunities. And then in college, I worked at the newspapers, like I mentioned, and that's how I made my way through school. I actually was really happy. I had some affluent roommates who hadn't had jobs throughout their college years, and we got ready to graduate, and I had a resume because I had to work. So I had newspaper experience, I'd worked at the New Era, I'd done all these different things, Deseret News, and they graduated without a resume really because they weren't forced to do those things. So I see that as a blessing. Internships, I mentioned, I worked at the New Era, which turned into a job. I worked at the Deseret News, which turned into a job. All of these things ended up being really, really helpful for me. And then I got my bachelor's and my master's here at BYU. I'm a big Cougar fan, and I love it. And also, motherhood is part of my path to entrepreneurism. When I became a mom, which was just over 18 years ago, my oldest just turned 18. He was born right when I was finishing my master's thesis. I literally finished with him on my lap, typing with one hand. And, but he was motivating to me. I wanted to finish it so I could just cuddle him without typing the whole time. But motherhood made me really want to explore the business world because I wanted flexibility. That was really my motivator. And I thought, if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm in charge, then I can set my schedule, I can work more, I can work less. That was truly my motivator. This is actually my youngest. I have 5 kids. The 4 are kind of close together and a little bit older, and then I have a gap, and I have a caboose named Lola, who's really happy, and we love her. And it's continued to be a motivator for me to run a business that runs around my schedule, honestly. And I work a lot. I take my laptop with me everywhere I go. It goes to bed with me even. It sits on my nightstand. But I mean, I'm always on, but I'm always working around my family as well. And I love that. And for me, motherhood was what motivated me to become an entrepreneur. I work with my husband, and a lot of people say, I couldn't do that. How many of you are married in here? So maybe half-ish of the class or so. Marriage is an interesting thing. My biggest fear when I was pre-marriage was that marriage would get boring. Honestly, when I would be at a restaurant, Cafe Rio or something, and you see an older couple and they're not talking, that was my greatest fear. Is that at some point you've told each other everything and there's nothing new to say. And being in business with my husband ensured that that will never happen. There's always a lot to talk about and dream about and solve and all of that. This is a little cartoon. I'm not sure you can read it, but the woman sitting at the desk, the man sitting across the desk, and he says, I think firing me would be a big mistake, mostly because we're married and we need the money. Which I actually have this sitting on my desk. I think it's funny. You know, being married to your business partner is, for me, 99.9% awesome. I really do love it, and it has strengthened us as a couple. The only challenge, the only reason I'm not giving it 100 is it's hard for us sometimes not to talk about work, because we could talk about it all the time. And sometimes one of or both of us aren't in the mood to talk about business all the time. You know, my family has been a big business prep for me as well. In a business setting, we employ about 15 people, so we're pretty small, but I interview a lot of successful entrepreneurs that have hundreds and thousands of employees, and they all talk about people. They all talk about the importance of their team, the importance of getting along and unity, but also unique ideas coming in, and all of the things they talk about with people, with soft skills. You learn that in a family setting, and roommates also. Whoever you share the walls of your home with, that is business prep, honestly, because business is getting along with people. It's loving people for who they are, harnessing their strengths, depending on their strengths and all that. These are my 5 kids, and this to me shows their personalities. The one that's the highest, he's my senior who's going to be graduating. He's athletic. My daughter to the left, she's my performer. She's got her hands up. She just played Belle at Hale Center Theater. The middle one, that's my middle child. He's always saying, hey, look at me, look at me. When I was so upset about the football, not winning the state football championships, he kept saying, you still need to raise me. You need to not think about this so much. Okay. And then my daughter here, she's a gymnast. She's got a lot of height there, and she's pretty dramatic. And then my little one here is just looking at them going, what's going on? Which one do I want to be like? So I just want to get that point across, that getting along with people is not just something you do to get by. If you have a tough roommate, see it as business prep. You're going to have a tough colleague at some point. It's really important to understand and love people. So let me tell you a little bit about our story. So Bennett Communications. So like I said, as soon as I became a mom, I started thinking, what can I do? I had worked at the Deseret News until about 12 hours before he was born. I loved my job. I didn't want to leave it until I had to. And so once I was in labor, I was like, I think I'm done here. So I went and had my baby, and then at that point, I felt like my worlds collided. I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to work. And how did that go together? And honestly, I hadn't seen my mom connect those two. The women in my life, I hadn't really seen a lot of examples of that. And so it was a little bit of an identity crisis for me to figure that out. But that's when I started thinking like an entrepreneur. And the first thing that I tried was a newsletter for high school journalism advisors. It's a very tiny niche. There's about 10,000 high schools or so in the country that are of a decent size. And I thought, I'm going to sell newsletters, a newsletter subscription, to high school journalism advisors. And that's what this was. SNS, Scholastic News Service, is what it was called, and then we had the abbreviation. And we thought, we're going to send this out, and we're going to get subscribers, and it's going to be awesome. And if we get 100% return, I'm doing the math, then we can buy a dream home, you know. Of course, you never get that kind of return. But we decided, my husband and I had our little baby, we were building our first house, actually living in my parents' basement at this moment, building our home, and we figured out that if for $5,000 we could have a sample newsletter and a sales letter and an envelope, we could send that out to all these high schools. And then they would obviously subscribe and send it back. Well, we put $5,000 on a credit card because we didn't have other resources or thoughts at that point. And within a week of us sending it out, we had our first subscriber, Patty Kennedy from Seattle. I should send her a Christmas card or something. I just remember her name. I've never met her. But just to see that first order come in was pretty exciting. And we ran this for about 8 years, and it eventually, we didn't even sell it or anything. It just became obsolete because everybody had the internet. No one needed this service. But what it was sort of like an Associated Press wire for high schoolers. We would give them story ideas, full stories, story ideas they could do, questions to ask, people to interview. Anyway, what this did for us, we started small. We only, in our biggest year, had about 700 subscribers at $50 a piece. So it was minor, minor success story. But it gave us confidence. It forced us to open our business account. It forced us to figure out sales tax and bulk mail and all of those things so that we could move on to the next thing, which was Utah Valley Magazine. So in 2000, September 2000, we came out with our first issue, which is the one here, the gardens. I can hardly look at this first cover because I'm no longer really that proud of it. But at the time, it was so exciting to have our very first glossy issue of Utah Valley Magazine, which we came up with on our own, no investors, no anything. It was exciting for that to come out. And it was honestly just thrilling. So it's been 15 and a half years since then. We do 6 a year, and we feature unique people on the cover every time, and a lot of personality profiles, and a lot of events, and then also display advertising is a big part of it as well. And so Utah Valley Magazine was our first big glossy success. And we're proud of it, and we were proud when we hit our 5-year, 10-year, 15-year. It's been quite a journey. Along the way, we've decided that there are other projects that we wanted to do. With Utah Valley Magazine, we tried to be all things to all people. We had a business section, we had a wedding section, our audience was a little bit confused, and we were confused who our audience was. So that's why we began to do some different titles. Utah Valley Bride was the next title that we tried, because don't you think that a bride audience is different than a general audience? It's quite different. You guys are our target market, many of you, for the Bride magazine, whereas Utah Valley might not be, because it's about how to decorate your home and all of those things. So Utah Valley Bride was our second one. Do any of you recognize this bride on the cover? Yes?
Yeah, that's Walt's daughter-in-law. I can't remember her name.
Okay, anyone know her name?
Walt Parcell.
Yeah.
Rachel Parcell.
Rachel Parcell. She was on our bride cover a little over 5 years ago. She's actually on our current cover of Utah Valley Magazine with her story of awesomeness. I actually have a picture of that later in my presentation. So our Bride magazine was the second title that we started with, and it's an annual publication, and we also have a strong Instagram and blog and all of those things because we know that digital is the way brides like to get their info as well. After that, we started Business Q, which is actually the publication that I'm most proud of and I love to work on the most often because it's continuing education for me. I get to interview people that come to your lecture series, and in fact, the video that I got sent about how to prepare for today, everyone in there, I thought, interviewed him. Business Q gives me that chance. It gives me that chance to go sit at the feet of a very successful entrepreneur and ask whatever I want to ask. And sometimes I ask things that I want to know for my business or for my personal gain. And so I love that. So Business Q is, we started in 2003, so it's 12 years old or so. And we love that. The Q is for quarterly, unless we decide to come out more often, which I'm hoping the revenue can justify that. And then it will stand for quotient or something, because I do like the name Business Q. Along the way, we've also started doing publishing for entities like the Utah Valley Parade of Homes, other Parade of Homes around the state. How many of you have attended a Parade of Homes, where you put on the booties and you walk through the cool homes? Really fun event, and it celebrates the home building industry in our valley, which has always been strong. And so we love that, and we love partnering with these companies. So the first three magazines I mentioned, Utah Valley Magazine, Bride, and Business Q, we own. They're ours. They're our proprietary publications. Things like Utah Valley Parade of Homes, we are hired to do that. And we partner with the organizer of the event. Other things that we now do, Prosper, which Scott mentioned in my intro. Prosper is a magazine that's on newsstands nationwide, And we love this project as well. And what it came from was we had featured a couple direct sales companies in our normal magazines, and one of them came to us and said, I have a great idea. You guys should do a magazine for the direct sales industry, network marketing, multi-levels are other words for it, and you guys could just kill, because there is another one, but it's really expensive and difficult, and you guys could come in and be the smaller press run, second option kind of a thing. And so Prosper, and we have another one called Celebrating Women, they feature one direct sales company in each issue. And there's other articles in there as well about business success and balance and all of those types of things, medicine, health. But this has been a successful one for us. This particular cover is featuring Kivana, which is a local company. And they had 5 gold medal Olympians who signed up as distributors. And we got them all to come to Orem on the same day for a photo shoot. Got Nadia Comaneci, Bart Connor, Micah Ruzioni, who, if you've seen The Miracle on Ice, he's the goalie there. He's the big personality. Anyway, that was a fun one there. And then also, I put this Summerfest on here. Cities ask us to publish things for them as well. So the Orem Summerfest event in the summer, we publish their magazine. So those are some of the things that we do. We publish about, depending on the year, between 35 and 45 magazines per year, with Utah Valley being 6 and Business Q being 4, and the Parade of Homes being 2 to 6, depending on what contracts we have. So all of those things add up to almost a deadline a week. Some of them are bigger than others, but it's a busy life. It's a fun life. It's a busy life that we've created here. All right, so I didn't end up getting an MBA. My master's is in communications, but I feel like I've earned it in other ways. Because of my experiences. And I wanted to share some of my lessons that I've learned, and then I'm going to get into some of the stories of people that I've interviewed. So doing what you love. I love what I do, and I interview people who love what they do because they have found success, and of course that's a key component. At one time I interviewed a man who had started a restaurant. My first question was, what made you want to start a restaurant? And he laughed and he said, I think everybody wants to start a restaurant. Like, dumb question. And I was like, everyone wants to start a magazine, are you kidding me? And we were both just so excited about what we were doing. So doing what you love is something that I've learned across the board from everyone that I've interviewed. Focusing on the business model, how does this make money? Every couple of months, someone contacts us and has a great idea for a new magazine. And it's true, the content would be fun to write and fun to read. But when we ask them, okay, but how do you plan to make money? That's where they haven't quite thought of that. So that matters. Of course, you have to do what you love, but it has to also have a model. Study the market, but still make decisions based on your creativity. What you don't want to do is figure out what the market needs and then pretend you're that. Of course, you want to study what the market needs and let that inform you, but you also need to bring to the market what hasn't been thought of before and what your strengths are. Meeting your clients' needs, obvious one. Take care of your team. Look ahead and set goals. Kind of obvious. I'm going to move on to some tips that I've learned from people I've interviewed. Based on time. So you guys know these people, right? These are our local heroes, Studio C. I loved this interview and photo shoot with them. This is the first fold-out cover that we had done. It's supposed to be a poster, but when it was delivered, it was folded under, so you only saw one half of the Scott Sterling reenactment. Had a lot of fun with them. It was fun to learn that they met because they were all just passionate about comedy and they were doing things for free and just for fun. And because of that network, they were in the right place at the right time to do something pretty awesome. And it's still exciting what they're doing. Every week and month, things are growing for them, and I'm excited about that. One of the things that surprised me about being my age in life is that my network began when I was your age, in college. I have worked for and hired people that I graduated with several times. I didn't realize that was a network I needed to be fostering and developing at that time. And it was harder then because we didn't have Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all those ways we have to connect. Don't miss out on that opportunity to meet the people in your classes, to really connect with people who have a shared interest, because you will run into each other. It'll surprise you that you'll see other faces in this class in your life, and that was the case with Studio C and part of their success. Learn from your past and tell your story. This is Noel Vallejo. If you haven't had him speak yet, he would be a great entrepreneur to have come. He owns Testout, which is in Pleasant Grove. It's kind of an under-the-radar type company they bought an old theater to hold their staff meetings in, and the day I came, they put my welcome on the marquee, which I thought was kind of cute. He had a tough life. He grew up on the border of Mexico and was motivated to create a different life. And when I interviewed him, it was 2 hours long, and the whole time he was grabbing tissues and crying and then throwing it in the wastebasket and crying some more. And his story touched me so much. We all have some difficult things perhaps in our past or in our families, or maybe there's something about ourselves we don't love. Learn from it. That's a plus. I loved him more, and I could see that motivated him. His challenges were actually blessings, learning from the past. Don't wait for the perfect conditions to seize the day. This is Becky Lockhart. She was the first female Speaker of the House in Utah and paved the way for women in a lot of ways. When she became a state legislator, she had 3 young kids. It didn't make sense for her to even run. And she could have said, I'm going to wait till the kids are older. I'm going to wait till I understand politics more. But she didn't do that. Instead, she had her in-laws move in for 8 weeks every year and help with her kids while she was part of the legislative session. This ran in July 2014. She passed away earlier this year, January of 2015. So about 6 months after this came out, she passed away at age 46 in a very unusual, highly unlikely scenario of a brain condition that she developed. I was so glad I loved the lessons that she taught me about seizing the day. And then when I realized her life was going to be cut so short, it made it all the more impactful to me. I took a picture down here at the bottom in her office of a little picture pedigree she had right by her desk, right by all the important political things she was working on. And it was her parents, her grandparents, her history. And she said, I just never want to forget where I came from, and I'm motivated by the shoulders I stand on. And I really love the lessons that I learned from Becky. Next, be memorable and take risks. This is a cover story that we did earlier this year. Scott Mitchell played for the U, but my story was about how, anyway, you'll have to read it. But he chose not to go to BYU, and BYU didn't react very well. We need to be better about that. I felt bad for the things that he experienced because he chose the U. But anyway, his recent claim to fame was that he went on The Biggest Loser and lost 160 pounds or something. And the day that we did the interview, he said, I want to hike a mountain with you to do the interview, which we ran up in this razor and then hiked up part of the mountain for this photo shoot and interview. And it was memorable. I think a lot of times as humans, we look around, what is everybody else doing? Social media, I think, makes it worse. Look around and we think we need to fit in. That's not true. We need to be and do something memorable. Another memorable interview was Mindy Gledhill, that girl likes to jump. Do you guys know her music? She's a local musician. I just interviewed her again last week. We're featuring her again for a new band that she's part of. And she likes to move. And as I saw her jumping up and down on this couch, I said, I want to do that too. So that I jumped up on there, and it ended up being one of my editor's letter for that issue. And it ended up being memorable. Look for something you can do that is so just out of the ordinary. Take risks with your friendships, with your opportunities, with your photo shoots, with whatever it is, be memorable. Creating a vision and taking action. I had a vision 8 years ago, probably 9 years ago now, to create for Utah County this event, this gala, this magazine, where we would name the top 50 businesses in Utah County. Like the Inc. 500, which I love, that's my favorite issue of any magazine, anytime, anywhere. It's the Inc. 500 issue, and I always just go through and mark all the Utah companies. I'm so fascinated by that. And I wanted to do something similar for Utah County. Initially, my vision was 100, the UV 100, but it became a little bit difficult. We scaled it back to 50 before we launched the thought. And this was a big deal for me because we're asking companies to apply, to submit their financial information. We're going to be printing that revenue information. We're going to be going public with these numbers, which sometimes are difficult for businesses to part with that private information. And then I wanted to have an event where they would come and they would gather and they would feel honored and they would network with each other. And that was a pretty big vision for me, this small girl from Idaho Falls. And I didn't feel like I was the business leader of the community or anything like that. But we've now been doing that for 8 years. Next year will be our 9th year. And it has become a celebration for the business community, and I love it. I hope it gets talked about at my funeral. Like, this is part of my legacy to the community. I just love honoring good behavior and great businesses, because what gets acknowledged gets repeated. And I want this community to be successful. So I love acknowledging strength and growth and all of that. So the UV50, which this is our issue this year, it's the cover that you see there this year. We do 30 fastest growing companies, we do 10 startups to watch, and we do 10 top revenue companies. The startups to watch I wanted to mention because I'm sure there are some of you in here, maybe several, who are involved in a startup. We look for the best startups. Every year we're looking for those 10. And we want to predict the next whatever, the next Domo, whatever's going to be cool. And so we look at those startups and we really try and pick the 10 that deserve that recognition. So if any of you are interested in that and you're in that position, we'll be gathering nominations starting in January. January to June is kind of when we start, May. January to May is when we're looking at them and then deciding and then doing the photo shoots and interviews and all of that. So, and this is part of my team here at our event. Again, we're a magazine publishing company, so throwing an event is not like totally in our wheelhouse, but it was part of our vision and we're excited about that. One of our traditions at the end of the night is to let these balloons go. We meet at the convention center and it's just like the thrill, letting those balloons go. Also, I just wanted to mention Rachel in this idea of creating a vision. Some of you follow her and that's awesome. She's 24 years old, lives in a beautiful home in Highland, and like I mentioned, she was on our bride cover. And she, from when she was little, just loved fashion, loved clothes, loved figuring out what she was going to wear the next day. And so she started a blog where she would talk about clothes, and people, she said, laughed at her. And her mom was like the only one who believed in her. And she thought, if I could even get 1,000 followers, 1,000 people to check out my blog, then that was like a big deal to her, and she was going to buy a new camera lens. Well, she hit 1,000, and she actually said being on our bride cover is what got her well known, because people started seeing her images and pinning them on Pinterest and things like that. Well, now she is the top Instagrammer in Utah County. She's closing in on 1 million followers. She is a big deal. The fashion icons of the world are coming to her to say, hey, can you model our clothes? Can you do our winter line? And she has an extremely successful business because she had a vision for what she could do. And I'm super proud of her. Really, really exciting. It's also humbling to go there and realize this 24-year-old that I just wrote about her wedding a couple years ago now has like a gazillion times more influence than me, who studied journalism and have been in the industry for a while. Super proud of what she's been able to accomplish. We do a little launch party for our magazine sometimes. We did a launch party here, and everyone came because they knew she was on the cover and wanted to meet her and learn more about her. So I love people with vision. It's exciting for me. Another business lesson is being persistent. Ann Romney is someone that I just really wanted to interview. I'm fascinated by the Romneys. I'm really impressed with what they've done with their family and with their business and the community and the fun that they have and the personality that they've shown. So I wanted to interview Ann, and that became my quest and my excitement. And this was in 2007, actually, when I first started to want to interview her. When you want to get a hold of a famous person, it's really difficult to just kind of Google their cell phone and then call them and they immediately answer. It doesn't really work that way. And so I was working all the angles, putting in all the requests on all the right websites, and just nothing was happening. And I put a sign on my desk, Ann Romney or bust. I'm like, this is happening. This is my current quest in life, is to interview Ann Romney. And I found out that she was coming to town for a fundraiser of some kind. I bought my ticket, I went there, and waited in line to talk to her and mentioned that I was editor of Utah Valley Magazine, and I'd interviewed Mitt before, and I really wanted to do a cover story on her. And she said, I would love to. Just work with my assistant right here, and she'll help you. Looking at the assistant like, yeah, we've been talking for months. But then the assistant was like, okay. But it was still really difficult to nail that down just because of schedules and her ability to, her accessibility in Utah. Well, a few weeks went by, and the assistant called and said, well, she's going to be in Utah for a couple weeks, so let's make it happen. And I can't tell you when, but just be ready, and we'll give you a call, and you can come over. So I spent 2 weeks ready to go, laptop charged up, ready to go, went to family reunions with my dresses, just in case they called. And the 2 weeks ended, and they didn't call. And I saw on KSL, the Romneys have left, and whatever. I'm like, what? I missed my opportunity. So again, calling the assistant, working it out. And she said, well, She is going to be in southern Utah for a few weeks. If you can fly down there and you can spend a day with her. Well, of course, I was excited to do that. I'm editor of Utah Valley Magazine. It involves like zero travel. So I was excited to go spend a day with her in Southern California. And it proved to me that persistence does pay off. Everybody I interview talks about that, how the odds were against them, but they just kept believing in it. And that was my little experiment, one of my experiments to see if it would happen. And I was as impressed with her as I thought I would be. My current quest is Robert Redford, if anyone wants to help me set up that interview. He hasn't wanted to do that yet. Another tip is don't let your phone limit you. This is something we're all struggling with. I look at my teenagers, and my husband and I, we're all sitting on the couch, not talking, we're all on our phone. That's a mistake that we make. That's something we're gonna have to overcome, you know? Like I mentioned earlier, people, your network, relationships, those things really matter. And when we're always looking at our phone, it's a problem. This is a picture of the subway in New York. I went there earlier this year to attend the UN's Commission on the Status of Women. It's a current cause that I'm interested in, is the cause of women and the plight of women around the world. And so I had gone to this UN conference, and I kept trying to talk to this guy on his phone. And he just pretended he didn't hear me. So I actually took his picture of him sitting there just pretending not to hear me. And I thought it was funny, and I just kept trying because I thought, I am going to get to know this guy no matter what. Well, then what happened was, it was St. Patrick's Day. So onto the subway came this, well, I'll let you see what came on the subway. All right, that livened things up. All of a sudden, my guy who wouldn't talk to me was looking at me, and we were talking. We're like, wasn't that amazing? We were just sitting here, and the bagpipes came on, and it really connected us. It got him up off of his phone. And I wish I had taken a picture of him looking at me, but I didn't think to do that. But anyway, we all need the bagpipe reminder of look up from your phone, connect with people around you. If you haven't met someone in this class, you've made a mistake, because you need to get to know each other, and you need to foster those friendships. However you want to keep in touch in the future, great. But you need to know people, and the people in this room are a great place to start. So don't let your phone become your crutch. You know, don't just always use it every spare 15 seconds. Look up, look around. Be you, be consistently you. These are two women I've interviewed that are just them, and I just love it. On the left, Noel Pace, who's an Olympian, skeleton, really exceptional, local girl. She's pregnant with twins in this picture. She's so funny because when I called her to see if we could do the interview, she said, well, we are moving and I am pregnant with twins, but come on over, no problem. And so which most people wouldn't think those were ideal photo conditions. When I got there, she was literally, like the moving truck was there. Like we helped her put boxes in the truck. Her house had no furniture. This was taken on the floor of her empty living room. She just wasn't trying to put on any airs. This is just who she is. And I really, really loved that, because who we are is unique, and no one else can be us. And sometimes in business we try to copy people, or sometimes just in life we try to be like the people around us. Not so. Here's Stephanie Nielsen. How many of you know who she is or have followed her blog? Awesome. So most of you do know who she is. She lives here in Provo. She was a popular blogger and then was in a plane crash and burned over 80% of her body. And took her a while to be comfortable with the new her. And in fact, it was about a year after the accident when she went on Oprah. And as she told me in the interview, she said she hadn't posted any pictures of her post-crash look. And when Oprah wanted her to be on the show, she thought, well, I'm going to get it done all at once. I'm going to show everybody what I look like all at once. And then if they want to be friends with me, then they can. But that way I don't have to show everyone one by one, like this is what I look like now. And of course, everyone loved her. People love people who are real and just them. And so her following and her fans are largely just based on that she's very real that way, and shows pictures of her evolving look as she's had different surgeries and things, and she's become, I think, more and more comfortable with being her, and that's really her signature, is that she lets us in on the imperfections of her life. And that really is what bonds people to her. So be you, be consistently you. Scare yourself once in a while. This was something I did that scared me this year. I did a TED Talk. And I mean, that doesn't sound that scary, but here's the thing. You had to stand on a little red circle, and there's a teleprompter that you're not supposed to look at, but they want you to be on it exactly because you've got to nail the time. And if you ever get lost, you need to be able to glance at it quickly, and the teleprompter guy needs to know exactly where you are. So all of this was mind-blowing for me, and we didn't get a chance to practice with the teleprompter before it was go time. And so this was like really the scary, other than the dancing with the stars, those are the two scariest things that I've done. Having kids is nothing. It's not even that scary. But this was frightening for me. But you know what? When I've done things that scared me, it always opens doors to new things, and it helps me understand the capacity that I now have. One of the things that I love about running, you mentioned in my intro that I enjoy running, is that it's cool to see the body's capacity increase. So when you first start running, like 1 mile is long and hard. But then as you keep going, all of a sudden you can do 2 miles, and then you can do 3 miles, and what's hard keeps increasing. We have that increased capacity. And so I love challenging not only my body, but my mind and my business to be like, okay, what would be scary? What would be impossible? Let's work toward that. And so I've loved to kind of do that. And that's another business principle that I've learned from people, is just to do something that scares you. Make a list of 10 things that scare you. Maybe talking to someone in this class is scary. Well, then do that. One of the things that I try to do in my day-to-day life, I always make a to-do list, is I try to do the things that I don't want to do first. And for me, a lot of those times, it's phone calls. I don't totally love talking on the phone, especially when it's someone who wants my business and I have to call and tell them we're not going to go your direction, those types of things. But I try to do those things that scare me or that I don't want to do first, because then I have increased capacity the rest of the day to do other things, and I think do them better. Be grateful and give credit. This is Neon Trees, another Provo stalwart here. And I loved interviewing these guys, and it was way fun because I got to interview them one-on-one, which is always what I prefer. You really get to know someone when it's just two people. If you're in a group, they're kind of entertaining each other or answering each other's questions, which is also fun. But I was able to get him one-on-one. And Tyler Glenn, who's the front man there, I loved our interview, and he's so loud and big and awesome on stage. And then one-on-one, he's very calm and even soft-spoken. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit is that he talked about his mom a lot and how grateful he was for her. He said that he gave her all the credit in the world for getting him into dance and singing and just being okay with all of that. And then he said, I love calling my mom, and everyone in the band loves calling my mom when anything cool happens. If we hit #1, or if we land this new contract, or have this new concert scheduled, or something sells out, everybody wants to call my mom, he said, because she turns it into the most exciting thing that's ever happened. And I love that. And I loved that he, in this interview where he could have just been like, yeah, I'm like the coolest thing that's ever happened, he was talking about all the things he was thankful for, all the people. He talked about Provo, how good Provo's been to him, and the people in the band. And everything was giving credit to other people. I love it when I interview people and they're telling me the strengths of their team, because that tells me a lot about their character. Sometimes in group projects, in group projects in college, you're wanting to do, everybody's got to be equal, right? If you do more than someone else, that ticks you off and all that. And I remember that. You know, it's hard to be in a group project where you feel like you're giving more than anyone else. But I will tell you, if you're the person who brings the most but doesn't point it out to everybody, that is a huge skill in life. That is a huge skill that your coworkers and your bosses and your business partners will all enjoy, to be that kind of person who gives credit to other people. It comes back to you in spades when you're that kind of person. Other people will thank you and praise you for things that you do. So that is my 10th and final thought tonight this afternoon, about things that I've learned about business principles, life principles, people principles that I've learned from running a magazine company in this digital age. So thank you so much for having me here today.